A major change is coming for the Montreal Canadiens after dropping the first two games of the Stanley Cup playoffs. A lot of Habs fans are fired up and are calling for a shakeup in the lineup. We're going to break it all down for you guys coming up on this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we get into it, we got to say we're on the road for 14,000 subscribers here before the end of round one. So you want to stay up on the latest news around the Habs and the entire NHL playoffs, make sure down below and hit that subscribe button. But Darius, we got a lot to talk about today after the Montreal Canadiens sadly go down the series 2-0 against the Washington Capitals in a one-goal game. One was an empty netter, basically losing 2-1. Been some very tight games, which a lot of people didn't suspect coming into this series. The Montreal Canadiens have been just right there every game, but there has been some weaknesses in their lineup that they need to be adjusted, and a lot of fans have been very skeptical and have been voicing their opinions on what they need to do to shift this lineup up so that they can get a win Friday at home in the Bell Center. And one of the guys that sticks out the most here for a lot of people is Patrik Laine. I mean, the three Finns on the team were sat in the third period last night. Armia just having one shift. Laine had zero. He was benched the entire third period after having a poor performance. I mean, if we just take a look at his 5v5 stats last night, 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 points, 0 shots with an 8.11 expected goals for percentage, which was dead last on the team last night. Defensemen had better XGF percentage than Patrik Laine last night. And we did get a quote from Marty St. Louis talking about why he made this decision to shorten the bench. He said he leaned on the guys that he thought would make a difference, and he said he thought they did their job and thought they had a great performance, but you know, when he shortened the bench, he seemed like this team played better and they wanted it more. So he thought it was a good decision. I thought it was a great decision as well. I thought they played a great third period. But, I mean, Darius, looking at this, Patrik Laine, it's not looking good for him. And a lot of Habs fans are calling for him to be shifted down the lineup or maybe even benched for the next game.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think when you look at the series, the games have been very close, which I don't think people around the league expected. I think Habs fans knew that they were going to be in this series, and they're a lot better of a team than I think a lot of people give them credit for. But, the series is slowly starting to slip away. It's 2-0 now. I know you're coming back home, but if you lose the next game, that is going to be very difficult to beat that Washington Capitals team. If you get the next game, then you're in good shape. And I feel like that was the message in this game from Martin St. Louis to his players. If you're not effective, and I know this is a younger team, this is a much younger team than the Montreal Canadiens and their fans have seen, the last time that they were in the playoffs, right? So I think this was a little bit of a, sending a message to some of the players saying, you can get away with some of this stuff in the regular season if you don't have a good night, but if you're not having a good night in the playoffs, you will not be playing and possibly not in the lineup next game because it's almost do or die for us in game 3. So maybe it's a bit of a message to kind of wake them up so then a couple of these guys can show up and step up in game 3. And in terms of Patrik Laine specifically, like you brought up, he's not playing well. He's not producing, and he's there to produce, to literally score goals. That's what he's there to do. And, a couple of playoffs ago when we saw him, I say a couple of playoffs ago, it's almost 10 years ago at this point, but when the Jets went to the conference final, he was an absolute animal, a beast in that series. He has to get back to being that Patrik Laine. We've seen it with the Montreal Canadiens. He was having fun again this season. Where's that Patrik Laine? Where has he gone? They need that guy to come back because they need him to produce. That's what he's there to do. Obviously, Suzuki's there to put up the assists. He's a great two-way player, one of the most underrated players. A couple of videos ago, I said that, I think he's the new Alex Barkov, where nobody talks about him, but he's so effective, one of the best in the league. So he's going to do his thing on the defensive side of the puck and all that. They need a guy like Patrik Laine to come in and score goals for them. And especially in a series where it is so tight. I didn't expect this. I thought Washington was going to score more goals. I think a lot of people thought that that's what was going to happen. It's been tight. If you get a couple more goals from the guys who are supposed to produce, it could be a different series. So again, I think a lot of this could be message sending from the coach to his players saying like, you're not going to play, or you might even be scratched if you don't pick it up here in game 3 because we have hockey games to win here, and if you don't want to do anything, then you're not going to play.
Now, like you said, we know Laine has it in him. It just seems like it's a mental block for this guy where he's lost his edge right now, and it's sad to see because we know how good of a player he can be. I think maybe sitting him for a game maybe lights an extra fire under him, and maybe he comes out the game after and just lights it up, because if this guy can start putting pucks in the back of the net like he did when he returned from injury earlier in the season, this is a completely different series and Montreal could potentially win this. So I think him getting his edge back is definitely a big a factor in the Habs potentially turning it around and winning this series. So hopefully we can get to see that out of him. But if we just take a look at the game score from last night, I think a guy who got a lot of flack last night was Laine Hutson. But as you see here, he was second in game score. He was the reason Montreal created a lot of scoring chances last night. You've seen him, have a lot of head fakes, burning those defenders, as a lot of people like to say on Twitter. But he played a great game last night, second on the team in game score. And you see these veteran guys, Darius and Dvorak and Anderson up there in game score as well. Caden Gooley leading the team last night in game score. It just seems like this third line of Gallagher, Dvorak, and Anderson have really been impactful in this series. And not to take away from the first line, because in game one they had created, I think it was like 11 scoring chances or something like that. So this top line has been great. The third line has been great. I just think this second and fourth line needs little tweaks so that they can stay in these games.
Absolutely. And maybe it's not a tweak, just a mental, again, like you said, it could be a mental block, like a thing they just have to get over in the next game, but it's going to happen. It has to happen quick. It has to happen in the next game. Right. But it's an interesting point when you look at, the game score like this. It's not necessarily, split in half between some of the more experienced players and the younger players, because obviously you have Laine Hutson up there, who's a great player, of course, and he's always going to be driving play for this team. But it is kind of split up, and you see a lot of the younger players at the bottom and maybe some inexperienced players as well. And like you said, the third line that has like Gallagher, Josh Anderson on it, and obviously Christian Dvorak, they play the game the right way. Say what you want about Christian Dvorak in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, scored last night, and he gets to those dirty areas that a lot of guys don't like to get to, right? Where you have to, in the playoffs, you have to make things uncomfortable for the other team. So that's why they found success so far, because they have that experience. They know what they need to bring to the table in the playoffs, and they continue to do that. And again, the first line is going to do what they do for the Montreal Canadiens. So much skill up there on the first line, but second line has to get going. Guys like Patrik Laine have to get going, and everybody just has to work like a cohesive unit. That's something that the Canadiens were dealing with earlier in the season, where there was no real identity. But I feel like as the season went, they started to find that, right? They need to get back to that, what made them this team that made the playoffs. I feel like they've lost that a little bit through the first two games. So, and again, despite all of that, yes, they're down 2-0 in the series. They have a great opportunity in front of them to try and tie the series back at home. And the games have been so close despite all of that. So I think they have a good opportunity in front of them, but a couple of these guys have to pick it up and figure it out, because I don't know how you feel about this, Casey, but I feel like I've seen a little bit out there about this as well. It could be an effort thing, which is something you can fix, right? It's not like you're just being bested and outmatched by the other team. You can fix something like that.
And you gotta think, like, this is a young group. A lot of the guys first time ever being in the Stanley Cup playoffs. A lot of the guys first time being in the Stanley Cup playoffs with fans in the seats. This is a daunting task, way more daunting than when they went to the finals way back when Caufield made his debut into the NHL. This is a completely different team. There's only 6 guys remaining from that roster, and a lot of them, it's their first lick at Stanley Cup playoffs action, and they had to start it on the road. So I think getting back at home, getting back into a familiar environment will definitely help this team out. But what you alluded to on this second line, a guy that sticks out to me that maybe needs a little bit of an extra boost here, I think is Alex Newhook, fellow Newfoundlander. I think he's played very well through these first couple of games, but he needs to find his shot right now, because whenever he splits through the D, has some crazy speed, gets open, he's firing the puck over the net. If he could get the puck down a little bit and under the bar, this guy could have 3 goals in this series right now. So I think if he finds his shot, that could be a great X factor for this Montreal team, because I think he's played well throughout these first couple of games. But looking at their lineup, there's a couple of guys that a lot of Habs fans are calling to be put in this lineup, Darius, and that's Arbor Jackeye, the Sheriff, and Michael Pezzetta. There's a lot of Habs fans saying the physicality isn't enough to match this Washington Capitals team. They're getting out hit. Their defense got out hit again last night. A lot of people are calling for Jackeye to come in and start laying some people out, and Pezzetta to come in for maybe a Heineman here and start laying some people out. What do you think about that? Do you think bringing some more physicality to this Montreal team could help them out in these last couple of games?
I would pump the brakes. I think more physicality would help the Montreal Canadiens, first of all, but I think it's with the current roster, upping their physicality. I think that's what's going to help the Montreal Canadiens. I would pump the brakes 100% on Pezzetta, that idea. I don't think that's a good idea, because I don't think you want to feed into what Washington is doing. Very similar to years ago when the Boston Bruins punked the Vancouver Canucks in the final, and then the Canucks decided that they were going to become the Bruins and then became a terrible team. I don't think you should feed into what the other team's doing. Continue to play your game, but up the physicality physicality. We knew what Washington was about, right? They're the heaviest team in the league coming into this series. We knew that you were going to get beat up a little bit. Now, I do like the idea of Jack-Eye because, again, like you said, he's the sheriff, right? He's a big body on defense. That is a thing that can help. And I think if anyone starts running around, he's going to, he's going to fight them. He's going to have something to say about it. So just having him on the ice might diffuse some of that we have seen earlier in the first two games. But again, with Pezzetta, I think that, everyone else in the forward group should up there because I feel like everyone who's in there right now is probably more skilled than him. No disrespect to him, but he brings something certain to the lineup. But I think everyone else has to up their physicality. But I do like the idea of Jack-Eye coming in because, again, he can diffuse things. He's a bigger body. And the Washington Capitals, with how heavy they are, you need that on the back end, I think, because they just keep dumping pucks in and hitting guys, right? So I do like that idea, but on Pezzetta, I would pump the brakes. I don't think you should fall too far into the trap of playing the other team's game.
Yeah, I agree. I think Jack-Eye needs to come in here for Struble. I think Struble has had a good series, but I think Cooley needs some backup here from laying the body and finishing their checks. One thing that I noticed from Game 1 to Game 2, Game 1, the Montreal Canadiens didn't finish their checks. You've seen a lot of guys peeling in the corners and just hauling up on guys when Washington was just crushing them whenever they got the chance. So in Game 2 last night, I did see them finishing their checks a lot more, which I did like. But bringing a guy like Jack-Eye in, he's going to be able to beat up on some guys. Maybe we see him and Tom Wilson get into the mix a little bit too, which would be interesting, but I definitely think he needs to come in here for Game 3. But quickly, before wrapping this video up, I want to talk about the power play because the power play has been very lackluster for this Montreal Canadiens team in this series, and I know we said our piece on Laine earlier, but I think a big change that needs to happen on this power play, we've seen Laine be open in his slot, have that one-timer, and he's hitting it off the side of the net. Like, this guy's just completely lost it, and I hope he does find it. But I think maybe bringing the youngster up here in Demidov, putting him on that power play one, could add an extra edge of this. I think he has looked all right in this series. He looks like an 18, 19-year-old kid getting his first taste of NHL playoff hockey. You can't expect more out of him. We've seen him, throw a pizza or two out into the middle of the ice from time to time. But this kid has talent. There's no doubt about that. He's going to find it in this series, and maybe getting him up there with the best the offense has on this power play one could help him unlock something.
Yeah, and is this two-way game lacking at the NHL level so far? I mean, yeah, maybe, right? And like you said, throwing some pizzas out in the middle of the ice, maybe, right? Like we've seen it, but I think, and I know a lot of coaches are stuck in their ways, right? They love to do things consistently and just stick to things and hoping that they do finally work out, right? But I think switching this, like you alluded to, could actually help the team in terms of, getting some juice in the legs of everyone, right? If you just switch up something and make it a little bit different so it's not stagnant like it has been, it could help a little bit. And hey, if it doesn't work and if it's an absolute disaster, what do you have to lose at this point? Try it once or twice and then go back to the way it was and then see if, going back to something that you had before helps in that way, because then at least you tried something new and that, and it could be just a mentality shift that needs to happen with some of the guys on the power play. So I would change it. I honestly would change something, right? And just see how that goes. If it works, fantastic, right? Then you look awesome and it worked out for the team. And if it doesn't, go back to the way it was and hopefully it just adds a little bit more juice to the team.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think as a Habs fan, I haven't lost hope. I think there's still hope that this team can come back and even up the series at home, and then it's anybody's ball game. But we want to hear your guys' thoughts down below. If you're Coach Marty, what changes are you making? Let us know down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we're on the road for 14,000 here before the end of the first round. So make sure you're down below, subscribe to the channel. But as always, I've been your host, KC, alongside my co-host, Darius. Keep your stick on the ice.